Today, I'm talking to Jody Lovell with Highlands Sotheby's International Realty of Highlands, North Carolina. She has been ranked 2 years in a row the top producing agent in the state of North Carolina. She has also been named one of America's most productive sales associates by Real Trends America's Best Real Estate Professionals. This group of highly successful sales agents represents less than 1% of real estate practitioners in the country. What might best reflect her success and skills is that her listings sell more than any other broker's listings in her local MLS. She talks about how to be a top real estate agent in any market. Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. This podcast was created for real estate agents across the country to come together, sharing ideas to take your, their, and our business to the next level. All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. And today we are so excited to have with us Jody Lovell, a top real estate agent in her market, and I think in the state, aren't you?
Yes.
I mean, I can't wait for this interview today, but in Highlands, North Carolina. Jody, thanks for being with Sotheby's International Realty, by the way, but thank you for being on the show.
Well, Jere, firstly, thank you for being remotely interested in having me on your show. I've admired you for years. I know how hardworking you are. I know how successful you are. It's just an honor to be here today.
Well, thank you. Well, it's an honor to have you. Everybody, this woman, she's so put together and so organized. And then she's running around selling more real estate than anybody in the state in a second home market where she isn't the biggest market. You're not the largest market but you do more business than anybody. That's incredible. So let's start with, I give you all that, and then we're going to hear your story first. How did you and why did you get into real estate in the first place?
Well, I'm a lawyer by profession, and I was living in London, England for 2 years. And when I came back to the States, I wanted to live in a city. So I thought about New York, DC, but I had a younger sister that had just moved to Atlanta. And it was a year before the Olympics, and Atlanta was on fire. There was a lot of publicity, there was a lot of energy, there was really a good vibe. So I thought I would give Atlanta a whirl. So I rented a condo at Park Place, where Elton John lives. I interviewed and was accepted a position as an attorney at King & Spalding. And I went on a blind date with my now husband, Wood Lovell. So everything sort of just fell into place. And Atlanta is such a welcoming city to outsiders. You know, there are some southern cities that I think are, there's an entry barrier, but Atlanta, if you have something to offer, people are open arms, which I really appreciated.
Everybody take note of that. If you're thinking about moving to Atlanta, come on.
It's true. It's absolutely
giving myself
true.
A plug, right?
It's true.
I would agree, but I'm Southern and I'm not from here, but I've been here long enough. But that's good to hear. So you came here, you're in Atlanta, you're an attorney, and then, you know, that was back a bit, what was that?
In the 90s, the late 90s. And my husband,
20-something years ago, yeah.
Yes, correct. And Wood had grown up in Atlanta, so he grew up coming to the mountains. And so he had a cabin up here. So we courted up here in the mountains. And so after we got married in December of 99, the boys were in college, and we just said, let's move to Highlands. It just got harder and harder to go back to Atlanta. And I was going to practice law. So I went with a local attorney, and we live in a country club, and the developer had just sold the club to the members.
So what year was that you, I don't want to lose you, but what year was that y'all moved to the Highlands?
2000.
So you're still an attorney in 2000.
Yes.
You had a job at a small firm there. You moved into a country club community.
Correct. Yes.
So keep going.
Okay. So Wood, the sales team left with the developer, and they were asking for people to take over the real estate office. And he was the only broker that put something in writing up here. And so the board accepted his business pro forma plan. In the meantime, I'm working with a local lawyer who chews on a cigar in the back room, watches TV, reads the newspaper, doesn't even have voicemail. And at 5 o'clock, he would say, let's go to the courthouse and research titles. And I said, well, don't the courthouses close at 5? He said, oh, don't worry. I have keys to all the courthouses. So I would get home at 11 o'clock at night after doing one of the most boring jobs in the world, researching titles.
Wow.
So on Friday, my first week in the job, I asked Wood if he would hire me in his real estate office. So he hasn't fired me 20 years later. We're still working together.
And you're still married.
And we're still married, yes, which helps, I think, in this business, because I think it's really hard. It's such a 24/7 business. And if only one person's in it, the other partner may not understand the demand. So it's really works for us that we're both in it, and we both can entertain, and we just eat, breathe, and sleep real estate, which we love.
Exactly. Well, I love what you said about being, because I think a lot of people, for example, I've got a spouse who's in it, but he's in commercial. So he understands it, but he's not working the same long. I mean, he works long hours, but he's not working every weekend and every night the way we so often do. What do you, and sometimes that's a balance because he supports it, but one of us, isn't working all the time, and we're not in business together. Do you find any challenges that you need to overcome, or he's kind of the broker owner and you're the agent, or how does that work? Is there any advice you have on making sure it does work? Or
yeah, I mean, I think that if both parties really understand, kind of what their roles are, where Wood always says, you're the upfront person, you're the, I'm the first line salesperson, and he's more the back office person, which I so appreciate, because one of the hardest things is to find, an honest bookkeeper and somebody that really keeps track of every single penny in your business. And so it's really a great balance for us. But he's also licensed broker, so if I need coverage, he can step in and do it. So it's really been a perfect blend for us, and he's really the wind under my wings for sure. But I think I can see with younger people raising a family, this is a tough business to be in. It's relentless. You're always on a leash. You can't really make plans, and so I can see there'd be a lot of disappointments in families.
Exactly. Well, disappointments, or you just get spouses who get it. But you're so right. So take us back to your career. So Wood said, "Sure, I'll hire you," and then what?
And then, because we were in the club, which was such a boost to getting started, a fellow member asked me to show her property my first weekend, and I sold $1 million house. So wow. It was just, but you're with friends here in this resort community. So, you're really just out having fun, looking at beautiful homes. And
go ahead.
No, I was just saying that, what I tell my clients, I think my legal background is, I don't sell you. I present the facts. I show you the evidence, and you're the judge and jury. So you're the one that makes the decisions.
I love that. You're the consultant. So it's I love it because you're in the right place, right time, right background. Obviously you're married, right? But here's what I'll say. A lot of people might go, oh, we were just lucky. But you also worked hard. And since then, I think this is what I'm really looking forward to hearing, because since then you have become a top agent in the state. You're a top agent among 70,000 other agents. You're also a top agent in the state, and you're in a market that doesn't necessarily have as much inventory, and the price points aren't necessarily as high as the other markets that you compete with. So what do you attribute to? I mean, for example, more of your listings sell in MLS than any other broker in MLS. Tell us a little bit about that, a little bit about what you attribute your success to, and wherever what do we need to know most about that?
Well,
how did you do it?
Well, it's an ongoing process. It's an everyday process. But firstly, 12 years ago, when we became part of the Sotheby's brand, that was a real game changer. It's just the most incredible brand in the world. I mean, that's just not a cliche, but the marketing, the exposure, the tools, the resources. And so our listings get the maximum online exposure that any listings can get. And some people go, oh, we have the best local real estate website. Well, it doesn't matter. Sotheby's has the best website in the world. They get 3 million views a month. And so when I send these reports out monthly to my clients, they're getting thousands and thousands of views online. So firstly, I think that the listings get the maximum exposure. And then over the years, as you know yourself, I mean, you build the relationships with your clients and you have this golden list of clients. So when you get a good listing, you can make a few phone calls and sometimes you're able to instantly, get the right match for that listing. But it's just, and the last thing that I will say is that it's my opinion that listing brokers sell listings, not buyers brokers. So on my high-end listings, I'm there for every showing because I know that house. I've been sitting with that seller for hours. And if you're a buyer's broker and you're showing 6 homes that day, there's no way you know that home like the listing broker. So I think it's really important for listing brokers to accept the responsibility that they have to sell regardless of who's representing the buyer.
I love to hear that story because I think that's so true. Especially, and you told me, but the higher the price point, the more value you are because there's more there. The market, the more unique the property is, the more unique the property is to what the market is, the more important it is to understand the market, and the more it is about the market that isn't necessarily public, quiet listings, custom properties. I mean, at least in Atlanta, it's probably the same in your market. Those things come into account to help the buyer understand the value of the property and how unique it is. And this isn't just one more commodity that if they pass on this one, another one's going to come up just like it.
Exactly. You're so right, Jere. I mean, there's so many, unique estates up here that once they sell, they'll probably never become available again in a person's lifetime.
Exactly. So what do you find, I've got 2 or 3 questions. I do this all the time on the show, but I've got 2 or 3 questions that I'm like, which one do I want to get out first? What do you find is your biggest strength, or what gives you your competitive edge in such a competitive market with so many other real estate agents?
I think that the base of a good broker is the 3 R's. You have to have a good reputation. And it's not just a reputation as being like, oh, I'm the best selling, I sell more than anybody else, but it's your reputation with your clients for authenticity and honesty and transparency. But those 3 things also are for other brokers. So you have to have that reputation amongst your colleagues. And so that's the first R. And the second R are your relationships. And really nurture those relationships. They're clients that become your best friends. I mean, I'm in people's wills as their executor. So that's the kind of relationship that you build over the years, which that then segues into your referrals. So it's reputation, relationship, referrals. And that's what I think is the basis of a successful broker.
Oh, that's great advice. And, you hear so many of the 3 P's, but the 3 R's. I love that: reputation, relationships, and referrals. And just to touch on those again, because I loved what you said, 2 things about reputation. It doesn't mean touting that you're number one. It doesn't mean, it goes deeper than that. And I noticed you also said reputation with your colleagues, meaning what most people think of as our competition. Give us a little bit about why. I think a lot of our listeners know, but I still love to tap into this and examples of why does it matter that you get along with your competition?
Well, first of all, I really like my fellow brokers. I mean, they're my friends. And so I want them to be successful as well. But when they're successful, I'm successful because we're selling each other's listings and we're helping each other. And it just raises the whole boat. But, we've been here for 20 years now. And as one client said to me, I asked him when he was going to retire. He's an author and he writes inspirational books. And he said, people retire to do what they love. I love what I'm doing, so I'm already retired. And so that's kind of how I feel. So we're going to be in this for the long haul as fellow brokers. So we want to get along and respect each other and treat each other right.
Exactly. And it reminds me of the 80-20 rule. I think 20% or maybe 5% of the agents are doing 80% or 5%. It's a 20-80, but I think it's more like the 95-5 in our business. You've got 5% of the agents doing 95% of the business, and those agents see one another over and over. And when you get in multiple offer situations or situations where there are properties that might be available but they're not on the market, you've got to make sure your colleagues trust you, and that they want to work with you, and they want to that they want to work with your offer as opposed to a competitor's offer.
Absolutely. And that they want to show your listing over someone else because they know you're going to be easier to get along with than another broker. So those are all the things that tie into your reputation.
And that enthusiasm brokers have to show your listings when your name's on the sign.
Right. Exactly.
I find myself trying to show certain agents listings because I enjoy working with them.
Right.
And even if it's not conscious, which helps if we can do the same for our fellow colleagues.
Exactly. Absolutely. I totally agree.
Now, I think a lot of us in this business don't know that, or I am embarrassed to say it took me a little while to learn and really grasp that. How did you learn that? Did you come in with that understanding? Or did you have any examples of really what led you to understand the value? Because I know that's a big part of your business, is your reputation, your relationships, not just with your clients, but with your colleagues. That's
interesting that you asked that question. Jere Metcalf, I think you're the new Oprah. I think you know how to ask real questions.
I'll take it. My net worth isn't quite where hers is, but hey.
Well, you're on your way, child. You're on your way.
Even if I can have a fraction, we'll do it anyway. But yeah.
My very first deal up here, the other broker basically, I hate to use the word screwed me out of my commission. And it was on a very technicality, and anyhow, it was a terrible experience. And I just felt like it could have been totally avoided. And that person, it was like, okay, I am not going to get bitter. I am not going to get back. I am just going to be successful. Success is going to be my revenge. And so that's when I learned that I was going to treat everyone else the right way and the proper way and the helpful way, and not be cutthroat about it. So that was my first deal. So that was the way that I learned it very quickly.
Wow. And it was, sometimes it's like our failures, it's not if you succeed, it's if you fail, or how you respond when you fail. And not that you even fail, but I'm sure it felt like a failure.
Yes.
And how you handled that situation to make you successful. Or I don't talk about Barbara Corcoran much, but in her biography, she talks about, do you remember her success or have you read it?
Yeah, I have not read it, no.
So she had a brokerage. I think it was a boyfriend, or I don't think they were married, but I'm not sure. I read it like over 5 years ago, or whenever the book came out. But they broke up. This is pretty extreme, but it's a great example, everybody, if you want to read her bio. But they separated. He had an affair with his assistant, and they separated, and she went to start her own brokerage. And he told her, you'll never make it. And that, she said, in the hardest times, it was to prove him wrong more than it was sometimes anything else. But it gave her that gumption and that grit to break through, to make those breakthroughs, to get her where she's gotten today. And I think she sold her first brokerage. I don't know how many but the end of the story is she sold the brokers that she was building in her bio for like 40 million or something crazy.
Well, that's true. I mean, like you said, sometimes you've got to stumble to like really be determined and say, I'm not going to let this keep me down. I'm going to fly above it. So that's what happened to me up here.
So relationships. You talked also about relationships with your clients. I mean, a lot of agents, I hear about them having great relationships, and, we invite them to Christmas parties, but you're the executor of clients in their wills. I mean, how do you accomplish that? What do you attribute to that kind of trust and that kind of relationship with your clients? That's pretty huge.
I don't really know, but except just being yourself. And, here in this community, it is a smaller community. So you see your clients all the time. So it's not like probably in a bigger city where you're selling a house and you may not see that client unless you invite them to a Christmas party. But we're neighbors and we're friends. And, we become really, a family. And in the club that we live in, I mean, there's 300 members, and it's very, very close knit. But this whole area, Jere, if I could describe to people what a great lifestyle it is. And we have more and more people moving up here full time because they're seeing the lack of crime and the beauty of the area, and the 5-star restaurants, the culture, all the things that this area has to offer.
The traffic.
And the lack of traffic. And you know, we came to Atlanta for overnight this week, and I don't want to be anti-Atlanta because I love Atlanta and it gave me my start in the South. So, but it's such a
big difference. Yeah.
It's a big difference. So I just think that this area sort of cultivates that tightness and that friendship that's more than just a passing acquaintance.
Now, here's the question I think of. And I wonder if everybody else is thinking of it, but in a community, and I grew up in South Georgia with 20,000 people, and now I live in Atlanta with a much bigger population, but in a tight-knit community, and this is relevant to all of us, no matter what market we're in, you're going to have conflicts, you're going to have run-ins, you're going to have difficult negotiations, you're going to have difficult conversations with sellers about properties, you're going to know things about people because you represent them. What is your biggest advice on how to handle kind of that intimacy of those clients and relationships, and keeping it, diffusing emotions, keeping things, you know, as comfortable for them as they can be, because you do live in such a close-knit community?
Well, that's a good question.
And I'm throwing lots of questions at you because you keep making me think of really good ones. So everybody, I'm really, really getting Jody, like putting her on the spot.
Well, I say I'm the repository of secrets. So I keep a lot of secrets. And during negotiations, I am very careful not to victimize or to villainize one side or the other. And so I have sometimes, I have to do a lot of things to make the other side happy, but they don't know that I'm the one doing it. So, as they say in life, you can get a lot accomplished if you don't care who gets the credit. But I mean, I've paid for more pieces of furniture, or I've, done things that if the other side knew that that's how they got it, they would be upset at the seller or the buyer or whatever. But I just try to do whatever it takes to have a very friendly transaction. And so that's part of what I do.
I love that, a friendly transaction, because I think about a lot of people think, oh, we negotiate, and especially you're dealing in a high price point with very special properties and selling a lot of real estate. I think some people would think, oh, she's just a mean, negotiator, or, a hard, cold-nosed businesswoman. And obviously you're incredibly savvy, but I think that's a great point. And I love to hear that from you, because it reminds me of, everybody knows, I don't know if we've talked about this yet, probably, but my most favorite book and author ever, Chris Voss. Of course, Tall Roz helped him write the book.
I love that. I love him.
But he talks about, I don't remember the exact words of the quote because I haven't read the book in a few months. I'm going to have to get back into it because I do love it. But he says I know, your last impression is the lasting impression. So always, he says, how you leave people, it's not the first impression, it's the last impression. And then he also talks about keeping people in a positive frame of mind, because if they're not positive, when people become angry, including yourself, you make bad decisions and do dumb things, and so do they. But doing those things that you said to keep a negotiation in a positive frame of mind.
Well, Jere, the interesting contrast I find between real estate and the law is that in litigation, it's a combat sport. Somebody wins, somebody loses. But in real estate, it's yoga. There are problems, there are uncomfortable positions, but you can bend and stretch and work them out. So that's just another way that I think about adversarial issues that come up. We cannot let them become adversarial.
And two thoughts about that, because I'm a real estate agent who's worked with a lot of attorneys, but not with your background. But sometimes I wonder, in working, especially with litigation attorneys, that in real estate, the other party can walk. Like, we don't have to show up in court. There's no scheduled date, and there's no repercussion. The repercussions are things that people can emotionally justify and get around and just not deal with you anymore. Whereas in a courtroom, everybody has to be there. And I
Correct.
wonder if that's the difference sometimes in our business. We learn that's just not going to work to be adversarial at all, because they will run away
Correct.
or we'll get a bad deal.
In what you said earlier about emotions, I had a client 10 years ago, and he was in charge of wealth management for Wells Fargo out of Charlotte. And we were selling his house here. And an issue came up, and we were working through it. And he said, I don't know how you do it. He goes, we invest billions of dollars a day with less emotion than goes in the sale of one home. And that is so true. And you see it all the time. You've got the wife and the husband on the selling side and on the buying side. And there are just so many emotions that's involved in this. I mean, we're really emotions managers more than negotiators most of the time.
So true. It's so true. And it's learning that about this business when you're in it, which again, I think everything just takes me, I learn everything the hard way.
Oh, I think
I have finally figured that out too.
I think you're doing just fine. I think you're doing just fine here.
Well, thank you. So now the last one, referrals, because here's my biggest question on referrals. Everybody in our business, you hear all of this stuff about, oh, just ask. But I have to wonder, especially with, you've got a caliber, the caliber of client and the caliber that you have as an agent, or of, the agent that you are. It's not like you're going to run around, and not to beat up on Brian Buffini, but it's not like you're going to run around and say, oh, by the way, I'm never too busy for your referrals. How do you cultivate referrals so gracefully and at such a high level?
I think it's just, just naturally keeping in touch with people. And it's not, you're right. I mean, I did a coaching thing at the end of last year. I was kind of in a funk, and I was like, oh, maybe I need coaching. And so I did it for a month, and I was like, you have to do so many calls a day, and you have to do this. And I'm like, that's not who I am. That's not who my clients are. So again, it's more just on a natural basis, and just staying in touch with people because you really care about them and you want to find out what's going on with them. And again, it's probably easier in this kind of market because if they have friends coming up here and they've dealt with me before, then they're usually, sending those friends to me. So I think it sort of just happens naturally.
Well, and I love to hear that, because I think there's so much of this coaching on make this many calls a day. But when you're making a call just to make a call because you have to, as opposed to before you make that call, what's your frame of mind? What's your intention? What's behind that call? Is it just to get a deal? Because if it is, the savvier the client, the higher the price point, the better product you want to sell, the better market you want to be in, the more that stuff, sorry, everybody who doesn't like to hear this, but the more evident that becomes, the more harmful that can be. Not to frighten people out of prospecting, but it's about doing it the right way with the right intention and with the right market knowledge.
Right.
How do you have any advice? Well, on market knowledge, when you do keep in touch with people, what do you find is your strength, and how do you hone? I think everybody's different, but how do you find you cultivate relationships, or what are your strengths in that opposed to maybe other brokers and other people?
We're in the hospitality business. And again, getting back to where we started, as far as being in the business with my husband, I mean, he understands that. So we are out, I mean, this week, here it is, the last week in February, and we're out 5 nights this week. So it's, we love it and we love the friends, but it's definitely, draining, and you've really got to keep yourself, up, and try to take care of yourself health wise, and try to work out and do all those things that keeps you feeling good enough to keep, to keep the energy, to keep those relationships, and to stay in touch with people. But we're in the hospitality business. And so just, being with the clients on a regular basis, and we want to do that. But again, up here it comes more naturally than probably in the city, where you have to make much more of an effort to go out at night and so forth.
I love that. I think everybody, you figure out what your strengths are and where you are, but a lot of what I'm hearing from you is it's about your mindset. It's about coming from a place of knowing your market and coming from a place of serving people and really helping people, authenticity, transparency. One more question. I'm going to just kind of make a comment, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this, on being so successful in a market like yours, because you're in a second home market where there's no urgency to buy a home, or there's probably a lot less common that you have in our market in Atlanta. There are a lot of people relocating to Atlanta, moving for jobs, moving for schools, moving for things that have kind of a timeline to give people a sense of urgency. How do you, actually, I'm not going to make a comment, I'm asking you a question, but how do you do you find yourself needing to create a sense of urgency? You're doing that, or does that take care of itself, or how do you work around that?
Well, it depends on the market conditions at the time. I mean, now, since the adjustment, I refuse to call it a recession. Since the adjustment,
I like that. I call it the depression, on the other hand. But
that's even worse than recession.
I know, exactly. It was so bad. But
Since the adjustment,
I'm the worst. What's that?
all right, please start using adjustment. Since the adjustment.
That's better. That's much better. I'm glad it adjusted. I'm glad it adjusted back to like good things. So the adjustment.
So the inventory was very bloated up here because most sellers don't have to sell, and there weren't that many buyers. So, but now we are in an ascending market and inventory is tightening up. So now I'm just, again, just presenting the facts to my clients. And it's like, if you don't buy now, there may not be anything in this club to buy, or, whatever club or whatever community. So there is a sense of urgency in this market now if you want to jump into it. And again, it's an ascending market, so prices are starting to go up. I'm not pretending like they've jumped up to where they were before the adjustment, but
interest rates keep going down, so
right.
it's crazy. So it'll be now. This interview is going to release right away, but I'm always curious to hear what we're thinking if we listen to this again in a couple of years. What the market's going to look like. What do you think? Do you think it's going to keep improving, or?
I believe my crystal ball tells me that this is going to be a runaway year for real estate. I mean, again, my clients that are much smarter than I, that are in the equities market, think that equities are overvalued, and a lot of people are stockpiling cash. And so they're looking for places to put that. And real estate has always been a safe place to put your cash. And Americans love real estate. And so I think the next couple of years are still going to be strong, minus some catastrophic disaster. But I am very, very bullish on real estate for the next 2 years.
I would agree. And that adjustment was quite an adjustment. I don't think we're gonna have an adjustment like that for a long time. I hope
not in our lifetime.
So you and Wood have built an incredibly strong office over the last 12 years. What do you attribute to building such a successful? Give us some of your. Go ahead. You've got to tout for us, but give us some of the successes and how you've grown. I mean, you're doing so well. What do you give us a little bit of the numbers on, what that looks like as a brokerage, as a company, not just your success, and what do you attribute to that success?
Thank you. Well, firstly, when we became a Sotheby's, it was just Wood, myself, and our office manager, who also is a licensed broker. And Ted has been with us for 20 years. So he's like a third son to us. So we have our little base going there. But we really have not recruited. I think that the biggest attraction is the Sotheby's brand, and it does attract the best brokers with, very high integrity, who are high quality individuals and believe in service to the client and believe in cooperating with each other. That the culture of our company is not backstabbing or trying to steal other people or clients. I mean, it's all cooperation and covering for each other and helping each other. And so that's really helped the company grow. So for the 6th year in a row, we're the top producing company in Highlands. And we have the highest average sales price in the 700s of any company that does much volume. So I think, again, it's the brand and the people that the brand has attracted. And then wouldn't I just sort of stay out of the way? I mean, I love the brokers and I'm there to help, but I'm not a helicopter owner. So it's the brand and our people. Those are the two main factors.
Well, I love what you said, staying out of the way, staying out of your own way. that can be a tough one, especially when you're an aggressive salesperson and you like to control things and make them happen. Knowing when to step back and stay your own way is kind of huge. Any advice on how to do that? And know when do you? It's kind of like, when do you know to push? When do you know to pull back? When do you? And in business and anything.
Well, I think a lot of that is just good intuition, which again, I think good brokers just innately have good intuition, or they wouldn't be as successful as they are. But there's another book I challenge you to read, Jere Metcalf. And the
Okay.
name of it is An Untethered Soul.
Oh, you did not mention that book because I have already read it.
Oh,
And
okay.
that book has been mentioned in the past, like probably in the last 5 interviews, it's been mentioned 2 other times.
Okay. Well, I thought I was giving you a
But
secret.
I totally interrupted you because I was so excited that but tell us about the book.
Well, and again, it's not that you can practice this regularly every single day, but the premise of the book is that, you know, we're here on this earth for such a short period of time, and not to let everyday issues upset you, and just kind of let the world go by. And whether it's good or bad, you're just like in awe that we're here, and you just don't judge it. And so I think that's another thing that's kind of let me understand that we're not in control. And so as much as we type A personalities want to be, and we want to control other people and situations, we're not. So, you know, do the best you can, work as hard as you can, and just be in awe of what happens.
Be in awe of what happens. So Michael Singer is the author of that book, but his friends call him Mickey. If I read a book I like, I get obsessed. Of course, Never Split the Difference, I was the most obsessed with and still am. But his autobiography is The Surrender Experiment.
I haven't read that.
If you love Untethered Soul, you'll love Surrender Experiment, because it's his autobiography. I said that, but it's his story, and it explains his life and how he learned what he wrote in Untethered Soul. And it puts a lot of context into Untethered Soul and what he went through, because he was kind of a hippie. Then he meditated for hours a day, and then he decided that was too much, and he was going to actually live life as opposed to try to meditate it away, because he loved meditating so much. And then when he did that, then life happened and he became incredibly successful. And then other life happened, and he goes through this period of time where he's potentially facing 7 years in prison for, I don't really know what, but something with the IRS, and accountant was embezzling or doing, I don't know, because I'm terrible with bookkeeping, have other people for that, like he did. Of course, it got him in trouble. But the book talks about how he went through that, and you would love it, because it when you read about his experience and how he handles it, and how even when he was in this stage of people this being wronged and all these terrible things happening, it put him in a position to write this book. Both of these books he would have never written. And then what came out at the end of that, and the peace he got, and that everything came through. And it even goes into, you know, our American, like he talks about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. He doesn't get into it too much, but he just talks about reflecting on our forefathers and reflecting on, and it's not a political book at all, everybody, but it's just interesting that he touches on that and talks about how he felt a connection, because his experience and his understanding of how that applied to being in court and going through what he went through, he talks about the foresight and the thought and what they put into writing the laws the way they did, so that when he was in this position now, in the end, it saved him from being wrongly accused and ended up in prison. Not that, but you have to read it, everybody. I don't want to get political, but it's very interesting. Besides the philosophical, your thoughts aren't who you are, all of that good stuff.
Right.
Even though this is a real estate podcast. So give us, way sidetracked there. Give us in business. I'm going to bring that back to you before we ask you just a few more questions. In reading Untethered Soul, because you brought that book up, I am sure, can you give us any examples of how you've applied that in your business, or examples of where you're like, yep, that is definitely resonates?
I think that every time you lose a deal or something goes sideways and you can be totally bummed out about it, that if you apply that theory, that this is this is fine. And it's like my mother sold real estate after I left the home. And she always used to say, real estate deals are like buses. There's another one coming down the road. So you have to just like tell yourself you just have to move on. So I think that the untethered soul kind of helps you do that too. Like, okay, you can't get emotionally involved in every single deal if in case something falls apart. So that's one way that I apply it.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's so true because it's so easy. I think successful people are successful, especially in luxury real estate. Horst Schultz, the founder of Ritz-Carlton, says the common denominator of all luxury is caring. So you care, but at some point there's a difference between caring because you're passionate and making sure you kind of let that become your fuel, not what destroys you, because it can. And
Right.
keeping that in perspective.
That's a good way to look at it. Right.
Um, okay, so now I'm going to ask you the final three questions of this interview.
Uh-oh.
And you're going, okay, well, the first one you've kind of already answered. Well, that's the second one you already answered. So I'm going to ask you the first one, and then we'll hit the second one again. The first one is, what is the one tool? This can be a philosophy. This can be something you do consistently. This can be a mindset. This can be technology. This can be a marketing piece. It can be anything. But what is one tool in this business, in being a real estate agent, that has been most impactful in your business that you couldn't have your level of success without?
Is this like an outside tool or an internal tool? Or?
Anything. I'll give you an example. One of my answers has been preparedness. Other answers have been a CRM. Some answers, my answer would be, monthly lunches with business women that I do religiously to cultivate relationships without missing a beat, to keep my relationships growing. I mean, it could be anything.
Okay, so I think mine is to be grateful. I mean, when I grew up, I couldn't even dream dreams big enough to imagine the kind of life we have. So just to be grateful for everything that happens. And if you're grateful, then you're always going to be happy. And that's going to be contagious with your clients and your coworkers. So that's my one thing, being grateful.
I love that. And that makes me think of, what is the saying about gratitude is the mother or the cultivator of all of the other virtues. It's it. If you're
Sorry, I
grateful,
don't
you've
know that
got
phrase.
everything else. What's that?
I said, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what that
I
phrase is.
don't either, but you make me think of that, because when you say that, I'm like, well, of course, because grateful is the key to everything else. That's beautiful. The next question, is there a book? Now we said Untethered Soul, so that could be it. But if there was a book, what book has most impacted your career? Is it Untethered Soul or is it another one?
No, actually, I read Never Split the Difference a couple months ago, and I've been giving it away to everybody and giving it as for Christmas presents. And I mean, that really impacted me. And I've even used some of his, one of his things in there was when the other side kind of goes quiet on you and you don't hear from them, and you say something like, well, have you given up on this deal, or have you given? And I used that recently, Jere, and it worked. The person's like, no, I haven't given up on that. No, and so anyhow,
Isn't that?
that really has impacted me more than any book recently, for sure.
Me too. I mean, that book gave me a sense of, that book helped me apply Untethered Soul a lot better. Because it gives you the tools to have conversations. It's human nature to want to defend or convince or control or try to just, you think it's your job to make it happen. It's not. What happens is going to happen, but it gives you the tools to help people discover. It helps give you the tools to stay out of the way and help people get out of their own way, to be honest with themselves, to make the better deal and the best possible deal happen.
Right. Yeah. So I love
that's
that
really
book.
what it's done for me.
So I do. I love that book.
Did you find yourself reading that book? I remember when I was reading that book, I was going my first round. I was really going through some particularly difficult transactions. I was dealing with probably one of the most difficult of my career. And I would listen, and I would literally like get one more tip and apply it to the deal there were 2 or 3 I was working on, and I would apply it and it just kept working. And there would be moments where I was like, there's no way this will work, but he said to do it, so I'm just going to do it. Like, what's there to lose? And then would do a 180 on the whole conversation.
No.
Did you find the same thing, or do you have any fun examples you want to share with us of that?
Yeah, I mean, just the one that I mentioned where I said, have you given, I text, the person wasn't responding to me. And so I just texted and said, have you given up on such and such?
Yeah.
And and like, a week had gone by and they hadn't responded. And within 5 minutes, they responded. But I've only read that book once, and now I want to read it with note cards and really keep notes, because you're right. When I'm reading it, I imagined, like which situation that I would use that tip in. So I'm going to go back and read it again.
And if I ever have a difficult conversation, actually, I've gotten so comfortable with it that I'm going to start doing this again, though, just because it's so helpful. If I had a really uncomfortable call to make or a really difficult conversation to have, which is kind of our job a lot of times, I would just start playing. Because back to what you said about untethered soul, it's not, it's not about you. Like, don't make things about you. It's not about that. Don't react. Don't judge. And
Right.
it's hard. Sometimes as passionate salespeople, that's a hard thing not to do when you're driven, and when so much is counting on you. But I would go back and listen to that before I would have to have one of those difficult conversations, and it would literally shift my whole mindset would shift off of it. Just puts you back to what you said earlier in the interview about mindset, and you would say things that you were clear that you're getting yourself and that you're in the right mindset, you're keeping the right mindset in building the 3 R's, the reputation, relationship, and referrals. Listening to that book does that for me even if it's just like 3 minutes.
No, it grounds you. So, I mean, that's something that we all need from time to time. You're right. So as much as we'd like to think we could become dispassionate, we don't. And we're, like you say, we're human beings. So we get emotional about things. So yeah, so you've inspired me to go back and read it again for sure.
I'm inspiring myself to do that. It's been too long, but I mean, it's still in my mind all the time. Last question. If there is one thing that you would hope we remember if we were just going to forget everything else, what's the one thing we better remember, or that you would advise we remember from this interview today, or just from you?
Well, I guess the one thing that I've learned in business, and I don't think it's just real estate or relationships, just be unshakably nice. Just be unshakably nice all the time. And, you can go home and cry in your bathroom, but if you're unshakably nice, then people are going to remember that. And that's going to be a basis for what's returned to you in life.
I love that. And I'm going to add I've got some notes from you. We were emailing and chatting back and forth. And you said, I'm going to add this to everybody, but you said being authentic, totally transparent, unshakably nice, and enthusiastic are the greatest traits to practice in this business.
I believe that. And enthusiasm is contagious. And so if you get enthused about something and you're confident and positive, that's going to spread all over. So I do believe that.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Jody. This was an awesome interview.
Thank you so much. And it's just, again, I'm just honored to be on your podcast, and I want to spend more time with you. So
I'm honored to have you. Let's do it. We're going to be in the Highlands soon. And when you're back in Atlanta, don't forget me.
I won't. You're always invited. The door is always open.